Good morning, 6th graders. Today we officially begin our journey into the Magnum Opus project. A magnum opus is the greatest achievement of an artist or writer. Since we are literally witnessing history in the making right now, your 6th grade English teachers have developed a unique project to not only capture the historical significance of today's events, but to also provide you with a special keepsake, your own magnum opus. We wanted you to work on something meaningful, something that would really demonstrate your talents as creative writers and thinkers. It will involve talent, skill, and hard work. Throughout history, great works have been produced during times of quarantine, such as this. George Orwell wrote his classic dystopian novel, 1984, during such a time. For this project, we selected the dystopian genre since it is one of the most popular among middle school students, and it easily ties into the events happening in our world today. This project will involve the use of a workbook, the National Novel Writing's Young Novelist Workbook, and you will write your story in conjunction with the different lessons that touch upon each aspect of story writing. Let's begin. The settings for dystopian literature can vary, but they all have one thing in common: society gone wrong. For example, in this picture, why does this young man appear stranded? What's happened? What kind of story could you create with a setting where the landscape changes every day? The big question, is privacy dead? With growing connectivity and technological advances, can we ever really feel like we have privacy anymore? Who's watching? What about the effects of natural or unnatural disasters on society? What would be the consequences? What would happen? All of which brings us to an introduction to dystopian literature. First of all, what is dystopia? In order to understand dystopia, you have to know what utopia is. Utopia is not a new concept, and it is an imagined place in which everything is perfect. Of course, the question is anything really perfect? The opposite of this would be dystopia, an imagined place where everything is unpleasant and corrupt. In a word, dystopia simply means bad place. And this setting is often something quite desolate, and typically futuristic. Someone is in control, and it's not our main character. Something has happened to society, and it's the main character's job to survive. Think about today's world. Things look very different than they used to. What's our new normal? How is society affected by disease, disasters, technology? How could this be used in a story? To provide you with some background, the idea of dystopia or utopia is not new. In fact, Sir Thomas More wrote a book entitled Utopia as far back as 1516. In that book, he described what he believed to be a perfect society. Thus, after that, a wave of utopian societies were created, and people became obsessed with that idea of that perfect living. What would it look like? What would it entail? Of course, the end result is most, if not all, of these societies were not successful. Now, the word dystopia did not originate until around the 1800s, but it's still been around for quite some time. Its primary purpose is to serve as the opposite for utopia, especially since so many of the societies that were put into practice eventually became undesirable places to live. Currently, the term dystopian is widely used in a literary context to categorize a certain genre of futuristic novels that feature undesirable places and societies. And here you have this iconic picture of the two opposites, utopia versus dystopia. Utopia, a fruitful tree, things in abundance. Dystopia, things gone wrong, war, famine. So why do authors write books like this? What is their purpose? Well, perhaps they're wanting to warn or advise their readers. You'll see that dystopian focuses on the what ifs. What if this happened? What if this were created? What if someone was trying to seize power or control for some purpose? And so these types of novels will create or establish those future consequences for present-day actions or affairs. They might also want to expose society's drive for greed, power, and control. And of course, a classic example that we're talking about right now would be the 1984 novel by George Orwell. And as we've discussed, when it comes to the setting of dystopian literature, it tends to be futuristic, yet realistic, technologically advanced. Technology is a key part. Scientifically advanced. Most of the places that are in the stories are bleak and dark cities or places. There is typically strict government control. And then you have what are called the haves and the have-nots. Society is divided into people that have what they need and those who do not. Maybe it's power, maybe it's wealth, but whatever it is, some people have it and some don't. Do you recognize these pictures from any books you've read lately? So you will be developing your main character or your protagonist, and then of course your antagonist, whoever's in opposition to them. Take the Hunger Games, for example. You have Katniss Everdeen, who was your average citizen, taking care of her family, hunting, and she is then put up against, the elect, the society, the elite, the powerful, the government leaders, the ones who control everything. Their mission is to protect the current state of affairs and to always maintain that power and control. They're selfish, they're greedy, and they want to make sure that things stay the way they are. And so in dystopian literature, the plot development will look something like this. You have the hero, who is usually a typical normal citizen living in that dystopian society. Throughout the rising action, the series of incidents, they become responsible for this rebellion against whoever is in power. During that rising action, while fighting whatever this power is, that hero discovers their own exceptional talents and strengths. The climax involves, after facing many obstacles, the hero succeeds then by either escaping or conquering whoever is in control. And then last but not least, the following action and resolution involve the hero maybe experiencing some loss of something. There has to be something that happens to them. But they end up making a difference in society and creating a better place. Maybe not a utopia, but perhaps getting away from the idea of that dystopia. These elements of plot will be the things that you will focus on for your story as well. Your exposition, which introduces your setting and your characters, your rising action, all the events of the story leading through it, the climax, the big scene of the book, falling action, which leads to then the resolution or how the story wraps up. The first thing you have to think about, though, is your conflict. Every story has a conflict. What's yours? We'll also be introducing a new term, motif. A motif, right here, is a symbol, an image, an idea that appears throughout your story frequently. It might be nature versus technology. It might be a simple good versus evil, freedom versus control, innocence versus corruption. Perhaps it's the importance of family and friendship that we want to keep getting back to. And in the end, it may be something about fighting to live. And so a motif is that symbol or that idea that you use throughout your story. What's yours? Here are some examples of stories you may be familiar with. Of course, we have 1984, but perhaps you've read Divergent, Warcross, or The Fifth Wave. You'll notice with dystopian that typically it also falls under the category of science fiction. So with The Fifth Wave, you have stories about aliens taking over the world, but because it's post-apocalyptic, it also is categorized as dystopian. In Warcross, you have technology being the forefront, the main aspect, when you have a bounty hunter who's literally going through cyberspace to track criminals. In Divergent, you have a post-apocalyptic society where the society is now divided into factions based on human virtues. People have to choose which one they want to belong to. In some classic dystopian novels, something like Fahrenheit 451, the theme is really unique and probably you can figure out why it's a favorite of English teachers. In this story, it's all about banning books because books are where ideas come from. Books are knowledge, books are power. And so the main character is a fireman and his job is to literally burn books. And so those in authority will do anything to stop them from trying to preserve books and read. And of course, we arrive back at 1984 by George Orwell. In this book, the main character, Winston Smith, lives in London, which is part of the country of Oceania. And so at this point in time, the world is divided into 3 countries for the entire globe: Oceania, Eurasia, and East Asia. It is led by Big Brother, which of course is censoring everyone's behaviors, even their thoughts. And so the main character longs to get out of this oppression. He wants to join something called the Brotherhood, which he's heard of. It's an underground rebel group, and their intent is to overthrow the government. So, like many good dystopias, though, it involves the use of propaganda, something that we learned during our World War II unit. And so you'll see here, this is what Big Brother tells society. War is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength. They literally say the opposite of what we logically know to be true. And they drill this into the minds of those in society over and over again. Here you have some examples of newer dystopian novels: The Darkest Minds, the Match series, Gamer Army, which just came out in November, and the Unwind trilogy. The Darkest Minds is a unique book. When the main character wakes up on her 10th birthday, she's changed in some way, and so then she's then sent to the government rehabilitation camp. There was a mysterious disease that killed most of America's children, but it left them with special powers. And so, similar to the factions we see in Divergent, they're all categorized into these different groups based on their power. In the book Matched, society decides everything for you: who you love, where you work, when you die. And for someone who's grown up in that society, they've trusted that. They just believe that that's the way it is until different events change their mind. The Unwind trilogy is particularly dark. There's a second civil war, and the resolution is that parents are able to unwind their children between the ages of 13 and 18, the teenage years, where they can shuffle them biologically, so to speak. And so with all these things in mind, today is the day where we need you to pick which option you want to pursue for your project. Doesn't mean you can't tweak it and modify it to make it your own, but we do want you to have a clear focus on what you're going to write. So maybe it's option A, thinking about a current technology that interests you. As we said, dystopian novels often focus on current or future technology and its impact on society, the what ifs, okay, the different possible consequences for that technology on society. Maybe you're interested in self-driving cars. That is current right now. All automotive companies are all in a big race to make sure that they perfect this particular technology. What will that mean for people in the future? Maybe you want to focus on social media and the effects that it will have or is having on society. So you'll try taking a current technology and adding your own spin on it. You may add features to that technology that complicate people's lives or make it harder for them to connect. The other option you have is option B, where you create your own version of an existing technology by adding elements to it. For example, maybe you create a communications network that runs on how many likes you get on social media. And then the last option here is where you take our current historical situation. So everything happened with the coronavirus. Look at how quickly the world has changed in days and weeks and months. 7 days ago, a week ago was different than today. The next 7 days will look very different. Social distancing is a new term that we're using, as are some other things. So what has caused this social distance? Can you abide by the laws? So you could create your story around the current situation, add in some details of your own, change it up a bit, but use our current today situation as an example. And so your assignment is this. You're creating your initial brainstorm for your idea, for your writing project. So you're going to tell us whether you've chosen option A, B, or C. You're going to describe the setting, this futuristic setting that you're creating, what it's going to look like, what it will entail. Number 3 on the list, you will list all 5 elements of plot and sketch out tentatively what your story is going to look like. So the exposition that involves your characters and your setting, some of the events that might happen in the rising action, what the climax might look like, what the falling action will include, and how your conflict will be resolved, the resolution. Number 4, we need a protagonist and an antagonist in any good story. Your protagonist, of course, your main character. Your antagonist is whoever is in opposition to them. So your protagonist is your main character hero. Your antagonist is whatever power or force is controlling things. And then number 5, 2 motifs or symbols, 2 ideas that occur throughout your story. Now, this is a brainstorm, so these are just possible ideas. Just want you to be thinking about it. You'll do one of 2 things. You'll either create a Google Doc where you record your thoughts and ideas for your brainstorm, more like a list, or you can draw a mind map for this. In other words, a graphic organizer. You'll submit your brainstorm to today's assignment post in Google Classroom. So either a Google Doc or a mind map. And by mind map, let's take a look at some examples. As we said, a mind map is just simply a graphic organizer. So it's more about drawing a picture versus creating a list. It's just a way for you to sketch out possible story ideas while you're brainstorming what you want to do for this project. A mind map is simply a drawing with descriptions. So you have your initial storyline, what is the main conflict, what's the setting going to look like, who are the characters, what is the plot, what's going to happen in the book, and what is my overall theme or motifs, what are the images or the ideas that are seen throughout the book. And so to review, the 5 elements of plot are the exposition, where we talk about characters and setting, the rising action, the climax or the big scene, the falling action, and the resolution. So exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. Just think of your plot diagram. And so to review, again, your assignment is this. Choose your option, whether you're going to do A, B, or C. Come up with your futuristic setting. List your 5 elements of plot. Just sketch out your story, what you think might happen. List your protagonist and your antagonist. Who are they? What are they like? And then provide 2 motifs or symbols you're going to use throughout your story. As again, this will be either put in a Google Doc where you will list these items, or you will draw a mind map where you also have these items present. So today there is a Google quiz over this video in Google Classroom for you. Make sure you take that. You'll then decide, again, which option you're going to select for your writing, A, B, or C, and then submit your brainstorm to the assignment post in Google Classroom. Be sure to include which option that you're choosing. For your brainstorm, it's either a Google Doc where you list your ideas, or you can use Notability to create that mind map we were talking about. Submit your work. Have a good day.